And Shawn, we have a brand new advertiser who I'm going to tell a little bit something about later called VacciCheck. Would you explain why you recommended they join our show and how you use them, since people are so concerned about over-vaccinating? And you're the one who said to me, but there's a test so you don't have to over-vaccinate.
Yes, I am really, really excited about welcoming VacciCheck to our show. It's a product I've been using for probably 4 or 5 months, and the concept I've been using in my practice for probably 15 years. As our listeners know, we try to take a more natural approach to healthcare for pets and other family members. And one of the things we really talk about is not giving unnecessary vaccines to dogs and cats. And the way that I approach this, and many holistic veterinarians approach this, is doing a very simple, inexpensive blood test called a titer test, which measures your pet's antibodies to vaccines they've had in prior years. That test literally lets your pet's body tell us, with a numerical value based upon the blood test, whether or not the antibodies are sufficient to provide protection, in which case more vaccines aren't necessary, or maybe the titers are low, and we can have a discussion with the pet owner about possibly doing vaccines. Now, VacciCheck came out with an in-office test, which makes this much easier for me. I used to have to send this test out, wait 3 to 4 weeks, and hope it got there through the mail and everything worked out well. Now I can do this test for dogs in my office and get results within minutes. We actually run the test every Tuesday afternoon in my office, since we have a little bit of downtime then. So I can get very valid results very inexpensively for pet owners right away. And the good news is, from what I've heard, VacciCheck is waiting on approval for their cat titer test, which I hope is out in the next couple of months. So then we can do this test for cats and dogs in our office. So I'm really, really excited, Tracie. We've got them as a sponsor. This is great news. It
really is, and you're the one who knew about them. I wasn't even familiar with it. It's a new product from this company. I myself was very frustrated by the idea of titer testing, because 2 of my dogs are now 11, but when one of them was about 8, I thought, well, maybe I don't need to revaccinate for rabies, which is a separate issue, because this VacciCheck checks the parvo, distemper,
and
hepatitis, which are what puppies get vaccinated for.
Yeah, they're the main core vaccines.
Yeah, the core vaccines. And then it used to be, for many years, there were vets who would revaccinate every year, and other vets who say, well, maybe every 3 years. But I did understand, and I have Weimaraners who are supposed to be very sensitive to vaccines. I was told that by the rescue that they came from, that first of all, you should never do all the vaccinations at once. But I began to understand by listening to you on the radio and knowing you and research that there's a lot of different situations in which you never have to revaccinate, but you have to find out how many antibodies are in the dog's system.
That's right.
That are still protecting him. So in this case, I decided to do it for rabies, because I actually didn't ever think I was supposed to revaccinate for the core vaccines, which I was wrong about, it turns out.
Well, most of the time you don't have to on a very frequent basis, but you're right. You might need to do it every so often. And once again, if the test tells you, what I like about this test is I tell my new clients who are coming to me who've heard about titers, they're excited to have found me because I'm about the only one in the area that does titers. They understand that literally their dog's body is telling me what to do as far as vaccination. So I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to make something up or kind of go with a hunch. The pet's body tells me what it needs, which is really the most holistic thing you can do when you're dealing with pet care or people care.
Well, for me, the problem was that they sent the blood out, like you said, and it was expensive. It was like, 5 years ago, it was $57 for the rabies test. I thought, wow, rabies vaccination costs about a third of that. So I waited, and it came back as being kind of borderline, not really fabulous protection. So it meant another vet appointment, and I kind of wasted the money because in the end I needed the rabies vaccination. But in this case, at least from what I read in the literature, it's 20 minutes and $20 to check for all 3 of the core diseases, which parvovirus is on the East Coast kind of eradicated, but the dogs that are rescuing from the south coming up to the Northeast, many of them are carriers of parvo. They either have never been vaccinated or improperly vaccinated at the wrong time. They're bringing this disease back to the Northeast. So people that aren't even necessarily adopting a rescue dog, just a dog, might be putting a lot of other dogs in the neighborhood at risk. The beauty of this VacciCheck test is that you don't have to revaccinate if not necessary, but you do know what to vaccinate for if your dog doesn't have protection in his blood. Right? I mean, that's
right.
a very
No.
different.
One thing I will tell you, though, just so people don't misunderstand, the $20 is actually my cost. I have to mark it up a little bit.
Oh, I see.
But
that's good that you told me that.
It's a lot less expensive than, the lab I was using. My cost was about double that, so I had to mark that up even more. So people are still saving money on this. Obviously, we have to mark up things we're doing, but it's nice because it is about half the price of sending the titers out. In some cases, it's about a fifth of the price from what I've seen some labs charging for titers. And like I said, you can do it right there in the office. I don't do the test. My staff does it. It's very, very easy to do. And there's really no downside to doing it. And as far as the cost goes, I know it costs a little bit more to do the titers than vaccines, but I kind of look at it as if you're doing vaccines your pet doesn't need, number one, you're wasting money, period. Number two, what if doing those cheap vaccines causes illness in your pets? And every time I drive by and I see the low-cost vet in town with the shot clinic on Saturday, and lying around the block, I'm thinking these poor saps are spending $30 and $40 for shots they don't need. And if their pet gets sick, gets cancer or something, think of all the money they've wasted on shots they now have to spend trying to save a pet, and maybe they can't save them at that point.
And there's no one to really stand behind them. I mean, if you go to your own vet and get vaccinated, the companies will stand behind what they've given you, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna give the number, which I think I totally neglected to do. Those of you out there that have any questions for Dr. Shawn and me, 888-627-6008. That's 888-627-6008. We are here and delighted to answer your questions. I'm going to read the little ad about VacciCheck because I really am psyched that they've joined us. I think it's a tool, a medical innovation that is something that most people wouldn't know about, and maybe even some vets don't know about it. And I would say to everybody,
most vets don't know about it.
So new. And, I think that when you have a tool like this that's new to the marketplace, it's really important for the consumer, which is the pet owner, to ask for it. And what I would recommend to people, if you're going to have your dog, I always have my dog's yearly exam right around now, the springtime, because they have to be rechecked for Lyme disease and they have to be revaccinated for Lyme disease, which is a vaccination you must get, an immunization every single year. So what I'm going to do I've made the appointment, but I'm going to call up the office and say, do you have VacciCheck? And if they say, what's that? I'll say, find out and get it, because I don't want my appointment without VacciCheck. If they say, well, sure, we have it, no problem. Because they're going to draw blood anyway, this is what they should do with at least some of the blood.
It's literally just a few more drops of blood. It's not much more to run this test.
Okay, so I'm going to read about VacciCheck.
Good.
Are you worried about the harmful side effects of over-vaccinating your dog? Is your vet worried about whether your dog still has protection from previous vaccinations? Instead of risking the potential dangers of automatically revaccinating, the solution is VacciCheck's blood titer test. It's simple, inexpensive, and quick. VacciCheck is done right in your veterinarian's office while you wait. Test your dog's blood for antibodies. If the blood shows antibodies to the deadly core diseases, distemper, parvovirus, and hepatitis, you don't need to revaccinate. Otherwise, you can protect your dog if one disease did not show protective immunity by revaccinating only against that illness. VacciCheck takes the worry out of keeping your dog safe. VacciCheck should be used on every puppy to confirm that she actually got the protective antibodies from her immunizations. Shelters and rescues should use VacciCheck when dogs arrive to separate protected pets from unprotected ones. For your dog's safety and your peace of mind, insist on a VacciCheck test at your dog's yearly checkup so you and your vet makes the best decision about long-term health. VacciCheck for cats is coming soon. So you're right, it's coming this spring. I don't know if I ever mentioned this before on the show, but about my Bedlington Terrier puppy Falstaff. We got these two puppies, Mistress Quickly and Falstaff, years and years ago. And he came from a very nice, good breeder. And he got distemper, and he'd been immunized. Now, if I had bought that puppy, and he was not there weren't even puppy mills in those days, to be honest with you. There were only like upper good breeders. And when he went for his first checkup, if I'd done VacciCheck, I would have known he had no immunity to distemper. He could have been revaccinated. Right. And he lived. He didn't die, and it's a deadly disease. He lived with a great deal of me sitting in a steamy bathroom, but he always looked sickly, and he never turned white like Bedlingtons do. He stayed a strange dark gray like the puppy color.